Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me enough. He told me you killed him.
No. I am your father.
Best there is, the best there was, and the best there ever will be.
I need the best.
I had the best words.
Well, I'm the best there is.
The best. We the best.
Have a chance to be the best of the best.
You are now listening to Best of the Best, presented by Radar Studios. Starring two guys who use their middle initial to sound cool. Here are your hosts, Neil E. Fisher and Mark P. Smith.
Well, you said it's pretty ominous out today, is what you said.
Yeah, it does look like the gates of hell are going to open up at any point.
Yeah, it's almost like
swallow us.
It's almost like the scene in War of the Worlds when it starts kind of like heat lightning, and Dakota Fanning is like, you know, what's going outside, Dad? And Tom Cruise goes outside and he's like, look, it's fine. And there's a huge like lightning bolt like hits the house.
Best scene in that movie for sure.
That's a really good part.
I like that movie as a whole. I don't like the ending, but that scene is.
Yeah, I really enjoy that movie. It's a good popcorn movie, good classic summer movie.
Good Spielberg.
Yeah, a lot of people don't like the ending, but I mean, it ends like that in the book, so you kind of just have to take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah,
but
just take it.
But no, yeah, great. My favorite part of that movie is the noise that the tripods make, because it scared me when I was in the theater. It's like the.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
it was a great sound design movie.
And then you just like know that, like, I love the scene where it like pops up and everyone's like, "What is this?" And then it just starts destroying everyone, just vaporizing people. And then Tom Cruise like runs through just everyone's ashes.
Yeah, that was a good one. Kind of a sequel in a way, I guess, or a retelling. I guess it would be more.
Yeah, or like retelling of the 50s War of the Worlds.
But did they make a movie before that? I mean, I know they did the radio drama with Orson Welles, but did they make?
There was
film?
there was a 50s War of the Worlds film that he kind of did some nods to, because there's an old couple in the movie. I can't remember if it was their grandparents. I think it was their grandparents, and those were the people from the 1953 movie, which I believe, Gene Barry and Ann Robinson.
Oh, fun fact, did not know that.
Yeah. So they're like the old couple that like waves to them. As a little, Spielberg really loved the 50s one because he saw it, as a kid. He loves like old movies, and it was kind of inspired by that. Well, you said the word sequel.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here today.
Yep. I've been excited for this conversation for a while because I think, well, I guess when we first started the idea of doing this podcast, this is like one of the initial like subject matters. We were like, best sequels, and I thought we would like save it until we got to episode, like 300 or something. But who knows? You might hate me at that point, and we might not even get to episode 50. But we are at episode 15, best sequels.
No,
16 best sequels. Excuse me. I guess it's kind of a sequel.
Yeah, I guess this is
best of the best. 16.
16.
But yeah, and I think it's also relevant to a lot of the films that are made right now. Like a lot of the summer movies are just sequels. They're just continuations of other franchises, especially the comic book films. So I think it's a prescient thing to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, for better or worse, we're in the age of universes and franchises. I mean, everything is either a movie that's within a franchise, a spin-off of a franchise, a prequel or reboot of a franchise. So, it just seems like every movie that's coming out now, just because they're so scared of losing money, has to be of a pre-existing property and a rehash or a revisit, I suppose. So,
but nothing we're going to talk about today is really a remake. I don't think we're talking about.
Yeah, these are all sequels.
They might be part of a rebooted thing, maybe, but of a property. But these are all sequels that we're considering today.
Yes, and I'm sure we forgot some of them, but I tried to get a decent list of the ones I could find.
I was thinking about this the other day. What to you makes a good sequel? Like if you've seen the first one or you've seen the second one or whatever. Like let's just say you've seen the first movie that was really great, and the second one's coming out. As a fan of said movie, I guess it depends on the characters and the story. But what do you think makes a good sequel?
Well, I think some sequels some sequels are better than the first one because they're bigger and they go a little bit more in depth. But sometimes I feel like the fault of sequels is that they try to go bigger and try to go better, but then they kind of fail because they lose what the heart of the first one was. So I think what makes a good sequel is one, if you liked the first movie, the sequel will expand on that universe a little bit. It'll kind of open more doors in the world, so to speak. You'll see more characters. The world becomes a little bit bigger. It's not as intimate. I also think the sequel, has a few, but not too many nods to the first one, like that you're kind of like, oh yeah, I remember that part in the first one. That was good. And it doesn't, turn the character into something it's not. So I feel like with Die Hards, even though Live Free or Die Hard is very, very entertaining, from there on, he kind of becomes like, infallible, like a superhero.
Yeah.
So I think like
which is what takes me out of those ones.
Yeah.
It's a good example.
Yeah, because Die Hard, the first one, the reason that movie works so well is he's just a normal guy put into an extraordinary situation, and he's going there to reconnect with his wife, and now he has to deal with terrorists.
Right.
And he's just a normal guy. Like the whole scene really that encapsulates the whole movie is when he has to like walk over the glass.
Yeah.
And he's got bloody feet, and then that affects him through the rest of the movie. But if you look at the later ones, like he'll get shot, and it's like no big deal.
Right.
And he's fine. Like he puts a tourniquet on it.
You feel like at any second he's going to die in those first three.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference, and I think some sequels try way too hard to like, oh well, we have an extra $50 million, we've got to do like 7 different action set pieces.
You know what? This is not always the rule, but the other thing that like I don't like that's a bummer about sequels is when they recast people. Well, for whatever reason, they have to recast someone.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
It takes me out of the illusion, of the actual world that the characters are in from the first one. So
yeah, that's one of the only faults of one of the movies that we're going to talk about today, I'm sure, is that they recast the female lead, someone I just didn't like, and it just kind of ruins it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So,
but I just want to make
what do you think?
I want to make
a good sequel.
I agree with what you said. I think for me, a sequel has to continue the arc of the characters. I think a good sequel is something that's planned, like you have a first movie that's insulated one, like you can tell that story in one movie, and then you continue that, like a la like Back to the Future 2, like if you watch those movies, they're like kind of one long movie. So I like sequels to continue the story. That doesn't have to be that specific, like where it's like, like what I just said, Back to the Future. But I think continuing the story, continuing the heart of what it is, I think usually like, and not in all cases, and I think we'll talk about this today, usually like the same director all through the 3 movies kind of keeps that, keeps that continuity, and it keeps those movies in a certain zone. Sometimes it's actually changes, or sometimes sequels change directors, and that actually is that's like a good thing at some point because you get like a nice perspective on something. But yeah, I think as long as they don't lose the heart, and as long as the story is, progressed, and sometimes they go back and do an origin. Sometimes they'll go back in time, and I think that's interesting. Although that can be tricky, and sometimes, can, be muddled in the trilogy or whatever it might be in the sequels. But I agree with you for the most part. I think. Now, the parameters for this...
Right.
I want to make clear, we're not saying these sequels are necessarily better than the first ones, right?
No, I think it's
saying
just...
these are...
Like, what is the best list of movies that happen to be sequels?
Right.
Yeah.
Sometimes they may be better, in our opinion.
Right.
Sometimes they might be just...
Sometimes they
really
improve
great.
upon and change.
Because I was thinking about that, making my list, I was like, well, some of these I really, really like a lot. I don't know if they're better than the first one, but they're still like if I saw it by itself and I didn't know the first one, it would still be a great movie, So, anyway.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good rule book to follow. I was looking through the list. I mean, I have let me see, like 25 movies that I think are pretty good. I'm not sure which ones I'm actually going to put into the mix, but there's some really good ones on here. So it's going to be hard to choose from, and some of these are kind of up for debate. Like some of these are technically, maybe you could consider sequels. Some of them I don't really consider a sequel, but I've seen articles on the contrary. So
okay,
we'll find all that out.
We need that discussion though.
Yeah. How do you want to? Well, first of all,
yeah.
last week we had Mallory on for the first time, which was great. Hope you guys enjoyed listening to her. I think her voice will probably be back to normal if we have her on again. But send us.
That was a fun episode. I didn't think a lot about those movies until we did it, and it's funny. I've been thinking like, I should watch a lot of those movies again because Mighty Ducks is on Netflix, and
I should rewatch that too.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So it was a really fun one. Just to reiterate, we need 25 iTunes reviews and iTunes reviews, which is the
it's the Irish version.
The Irish version of iTunes. We need 25 iTunes reviews, and we will choose one lucky winner to get a Radar Studios T-shirt. So just hopefully send those in. We haven't seen any new ones come in as of this morning, so probably by next week we'll see any that you send in.
Please rate and review. Subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts. We're still trying to work on Stitcher. For some reason, they're being weird about us being on there, but hopefully we can get that going again. But or I can get that going.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with Stitcher,
but
we're working on a website.
We're hoping to. We have a website up right now, bestofthebestpod.com. If you go there, you can we can link to any of our social media accounts. You can subscribe on iTunes or wherever. And but we're currently working on it to make it even better. We're hoping to, for every episode, add a bunch of supplemental content, articles, videos, things that are interesting and sort of pertinent to the episode discussion. So I think that will be pretty cool once that's up and going. I think people will enjoy that as a like I said, supplemental feature or supplemental addition to listening to the episode itself. So
I think that's important. And lastly, before we start, if you know anyone who listens to podcasts, and we feel like everyone likes movies, but if you know anyone that listens to podcasts, just tell them about our podcast, because I think we're going to start maybe doing some marketing in the near future here, because we just wanted to kind of get a nice selection of episodes out for people to discover. But if you know someone who likes podcasts, just tell them, check out Best of the Best. Have them probably just go to the website, bestofthebestpod.com, like Mark said, or tell them to search Best of the Best Radar on iTunes or their podcast app, and we'll come up. We just, we want to have some new listeners, but everyone likes movies. So, I always tell people podcasts that I listen to when we have that discussion at parties or get-togethers. It's a nice little icebreaker to kind of see where other people's sensibilities lie and where their tastes are. So, if you like us, spread it around just like an STD.
Yeah, spread it around.
It's called the BOTB.
Yeah.
Do you want to start first, Mark?
Sure. So
best sequels.
So starting our sequel discussion, I will talk like this the whole time. In no way will that be annoying.
See how long people can last.
Okay, to start it off, let me see here. I've been throwing out some bangers in the last couple episodes right away, just to really fuck with you more than anything, because I live to do that. Man, I have a long list just like you, so I don't want to in effort to not have a 4-hour long podcast. I will throw in a banger right away. I don't think you can talk about sequels without talking about 1980's The Empire Strikes Back.
Right.
Episode
Star Wars
5. Directed by Irvin Kershner. Now, here's an example of a film that, what I was telling you before, the parameters of a lot of these trilogies, let's say like the Indiana Joneses or the Back to the Futures, having the same director, keeping that spirit, keeping that creative direction alive or consistent through all three films. This one, directed by Irvin Kershner, not directed by George Lucas, who directed A New Hope and then the subsequent prequels 1, 2, and 3. I think benefits greatly in that Irvin Kershner, very much more of a dramatic director, if that makes any sense, helmed this movie, and I think this is to me one of the greatest sequels of all time. I mean, I wish I was born when this movie came out, because it would have been great to experience the pre-internet, spoiler-free, experience of going to the movies. Yeah. And honestly, if you haven't seen Empire Strikes Back at this point, you should really just stop listening to anything on or watching anything on the internet. But of course, we have the great turn at the end where Darth Vader reveals that he's Luke Skywalker. I'm going to call Hanzo. that he's Luke Skywalker's father, and that's just one of the best, like, I see dead people, Soylent Green as people, kind of moments in cinema history. And like I was saying, I think this movie greatly benefits in terms of its tone, like its sort of darker, second act operatic tone.
Right.
Much more so that Irvin Kershner helmed it than I think George Lucas, and I think he was very smart to turn over the reins to.
Yeah,
because this actually explores the characters much more than anything. I mean, there's some great action pieces. I mean, there's the battle on Hoth, and there's the
what's that thing he kills that he like sleeps in or whatever?
Oh, the not a tauntaun. Those are the things they ride.
It's not not wombat.
Wampas are on Tatooine. I don't know. I can't forget. But anyway, yeah, this is one of the greatest sequels of all time.
I think it is a tauntaun, right?
Well, tauntaun's the thing they ride on.
Oh yeah, but doesn't he? He sleeps in the tauntaun, right?
Oh yeah. Sorry.
But,
Han Solo finds him, cuts open the tauntaun because the tauntaun. Remember the tauntaun faints from the cold, like he faints from, and then Han Solo goes, "I thought they smelled bad on the outside," because he cuts open, the guts fall out, and then he shoves Luke Skywalker in to keep him warm because he got he finds Luke Skywalker after he got attacked by the that cave thing, whatever it's called.
That's what I'm trying to.
Yeah, that's what I thought you were. I can't remember the name of that thing though. You're right.
I guess it is a wampa. So the wampa is in the cave. The tauntaun is what he sleeps in.
Okay, wampa. Okay.
So
I thought the wampa was like a little creature on Tatooine. So I'm wrong.
No, yeah. So the tauntaun is the revenant moment where he sleeps inside of it.
Right. The bear. Yeah. What are your thoughts on? I actually think I'm gonna go on a limb and say this is my favorite Star Wars movie of all time too. Like it beats out all of them. I do think it's better. It's a great like now that we have the new ones and the prequels, it's a great piece in the sort of arc that is Star Wars. But
yeah,
I find it to be.
No, I think it's a good movie. I rewatched it not too long ago. I probably should rewatch it again because I was a little half asleep. But I think what you're saying about it being important for a number of reasons is valid, though. I mean, to be out, in the world when that huge twist ending came, I think it did that really, really well. I think that it's influential on a number of matters because now anytime a movie has a sequel, I feel like every single film article written about it or interview with the director or the writer is always like, well, it's going to be the Empire Strikes Back of the franchise because it's going to be darker and, it's going to change the tone or whatever. So I think that's pretty influential. You have the nice introduction of Billy D. Williams and as Lando Calrissian.
All right.
Yeah, so that's really good. This is
45.
Lawrence Kasdan's first movie he wrote, which is pretty crazy. And then right after this, he wrote Raiders of the Lost Ark. So pretty cool for him and sort of his relationship with Lucasfilm and Star Wars.
Too.
Yeah, and director as well. Yeah, you know what? It is darker. This is the one where we find out that Luke and Leia are brother and sister, right? Or is that the first one?
No, we don't find that out until... God, people are going to kill me now. Until... Damn.
Here, I'm just Googling.
Return of the Jedi, right?
No, it says Empire Strikes Back. Leia commands a rebel base and evades Vader, and she falls in love with the smuggler. Oh, no, wait. Oh, here we go. Leia leads the operation to rescue Han from the crime lord Jabba the Hutt in Return of the Jedi and is revealed to be Vader's daughter.
At the end, they rescue him, and then you kind of feel creeped out because they...
Yeah, because they kissed, right?
Yeah.
The other big good thing that I was going to say is it has the great sort of training montage with Yoda, which, Frank Oz.
Yeah, the Dagobah.
My only fault of this movie, and when I was a kid, I kind of understand it being a kid, and I think I might have said this on the podcast before, but it's changed since I've become an adult and I've rewatched the films. Boba Fett isn't... I mean, he looks cool, but he's not... I just don't think he's a good character. I think he's like the worst bounty hunter ever. Because he never kills anyone that I know of in the movie. He's just chasing people. He doesn't really do anything, and he's not good at his job, but he looks cool.
No.
So if you rewatch it...
No.
He's just not...
I'm over here melting into ash.
I just think he's a little bit overrated as a badass character because he doesn't really do anything badass.
Do you know why he
just
is
dies.
so popular?
Why is that?
Because he has a short stint in Empire Strikes Back. you see him when Darth Vader gathers the bounty hunters. You see him, right? Mm-hmm. He might say like 6 words in the whole movie, and then you see him at the end when he collects the carbonite. That's another great scene in Empire was when they put Han in carbonite and Leia goes, "I love you," and he says, "I know." That's like one of the fucking most baller
improv line.
It's like the best Han Solo line of all time. And then he takes them into the Slave One, which is his ship, the bounty hunter ship, and he's actually like a lot more popular because of the toy.
See, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I think I love his outfit.
He's popular
I think he's,
outside of. I think pop culture made him more relevant.
I think from a design standpoint, he's badass. I think his outfit's badass. But if you just kind of if you take out all the scenes of Boba Fett, and he's just not that great.
Well, I also think because, and I'm going to defend this because I don't agree with what you're saying.
Yeah.
And that's fine. We live in a world where we should agree and I'm going to give in diatribe on.
I mean, he only has 7 minutes of screen time in the entire trilogy.
I feel like I agree with you in a way, in some ways, which I feel like they they fan serviced him into the prequels with the with Jango Fett, his dad, and like when they show Boba Fett as a child.
Yeah,
I think they should have kept him more mysterious. I think that's why he's so badass he's such a badass like kind of character, because in Return and Empire Strikes Back, he doesn't have a lot of screen time, and you see him for glimpses. And like I said, I think pop culture in terms of outside of the movies and stuff made him, more. I think he's featured in that Christmas special too. I'm not sure, but
it's just pretty interesting. So like Google, there's a couple articles online that are pretty interesting.
He's badass looking. He's one of the best designed characters in that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. He's badass looking. And he looks great, but
I do agree with you in an outside way, which I think in the prequels they kind of like made him less mysterious and kind of made him more like sympathetic because you saw him as a child, which I wasn't a big fan of. I wish he would still be kind of like a faceless kind of. The
3 quick reasons on one of the articles that I read though is that he's basically just a different version of a stormtrooper. He just has a different outfit, a cooler outfit. And he didn't really capture Han Solo. He just, followed him to Cloud City, and then the Empire did the rest of the work.
Right.
He was ultimately, killed by a nearly blind man. So Han Solo, who was kind of blind, accidentally bumped into him, and then his backpack took off.
He's rumored to have escaped the.
I'm sure he did, yeah. But he just gets bumped on accident into a hole, and then he just fell into the Sarlacc pit and
because you remember in Shadows of the Empire, doesn't he fight him at some point?
I kind of remember that, yeah.
Maybe he escapes. I think he escapes the Sarlacc pit in the greater.
So I know it's a controversial opinion, but I'm saying I like the movie. I'm just saying that
But would you hate it if he came back in one of these new ones?
No, see, I think they should have just scrapped the Han Solo standalone movie and done a Boba Fett one where he actually was a badass.
Right.
Because I feel like it's Rogue.
They probably will do that.
I'm sure they will. It's
they set up him in the prequels.
It's really the Rogue One situation. It's like, they made Rogue One to fix a plot hole about the Death Star only having one button that basically destroys the whole thing.
Right.
And Rogue One was great. So like, do a Boba Fett one, maybe whether it's a prequel or not, that makes him a badass so that even though he did just...
Or shows his arc.
Because he doesn't really have an arc in the movies, and he just like falls in a pit, which is like really kind of stupid. So anyway, great movie.
You can go to hell. It's fine.
You can go to hell and you die. And our executive producer Graham Gange just walked in with his coffee, and I'm sure he'll have an opinion on this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I don't think Graham will have an opinion
on Boba Fett. Oh yeah, that was your joke. Sarcasm.
Go ahead, brother.
Okay, so you on Empire Strikes Back? Great pick. I'm just going to do some honorable mentions.
All right. I got a bunch of honorable mentions.
So I'll just do that just to get us started. First of all, one of my favorite sequels of all time, Twilight Breaking Dawn Part 2.
Yep, I love it.
Just kidding on that one.
Just start things off. Shrek the second.
Or Break Into Electric
Beethoven's
Boogaloo.
Third.
Beethoven's Third. Yeah. Oh shoot, I didn't even think about those. Okay, so for the artsy fans out there, who I know where you're out there, and you enjoy my conversations.
You're sitting in a black and white room with a typewriter.
With a typewriter, and you constantly have 35 millimeter film projected in the background with cigarette smoke. So the first one I'm going to mention, honorable mention, 1935's Bride of Frankenstein, introducing a female character into the Universal Monsters.
Think about that, yeah.
Yeah, so introducing a female horror villain into the Universal Monsters universe. So really, I feel like that might be feminism. Yeah, it might be one of the first universes. I mean, before Marvel, before DC, all that stuff, Fast and Furious. So.
Certainly a big one. I mean, certainly.
Yeah, I mean Dracula, Wolfman, Creature of the Black Lagoon, Bride of Frankenstein. So I wanted to mention that one.
Yeah.
For fans of Peter Sellers and his character, the Pink Panther, you have A Shot in the Dark, what some consider to be the best sequel of the Pink Panther franchise.
Good one.
Another one, honorable mention. This one, I love this series of movies. If you have not seen any of them, I really recommend checking them out.
Spy Kids.
Spy Kids. Yeah, it's going to be Spy Kids 3, not 2.
Skip 2.
So this series is from Japan. It is an awesome sort of Ronin, samurai series. Road to Perdition was sort of based on the manga or graphic novel, I should say, of this. It's a Lone Wolf and Cub. So I very, very much recommend you check out Lone Wolf and Cub. Basically, it is directed by Kenji Masumi. It is Lone Wolf and Cub, Baby Cart at the River Styx is what it's called. And that's the full title. And so basically, if you don't know anything about Lone Wolf and Cub...
is this like part 2 of this? Or
there's a lot of them.
Oh, okay.
I forget which one this is.
Okay.
There's quite a bit. Anyway, so... basically, it's about a former executioner of the shogun, and he rolls around his little son in this cart, in this baby cart, I guess you could say, and he represents the cub. And they just kind of go on travels, and he ends up fighting and killing people. But check this one out: Lone Wolf and Cub, Baby Cart at the River Styx. And then one more Japanese film actually. So I love the film Yojimbo by Akira Kurosawa, starring Toshiro Mifune. You'll recognize Yojimbo as the inspiration for Fistful of Dollars with Sergio Leone classic. Also the Bruce Willis sort of reboot remake set in the Prohibition era called Last Man Standing.
Okay.
Basically any movie where there's two rival gangs trying to fight and one guy's in the middle and plays them both plays the fiddle with both of them is based on Yojimbo. But the sequel, Sanjuro, is very, very good. So I recommend that one. But let's get down to brass tacks.
These are all Criterion, I'm assuming?
I believe so. I don't know about Lone Wolf and Cub, but Sanjuro is definitely Criterion. All right, so this is good. So you started out pretty big.
Very big.
Where do I go? Okay.
Great honorable mentions there, by the way.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I wanted to have a good variety. A little foreign, a little comedy, a little horror, if you will.
A little shop of horrors.
Little Shop of Horrors. Feed me, Seymour. Okay. So I am going to skirt. I was having a lot of trouble not saying Sister Act 2 Back in the Habit because it is so clever that they say the word habit, and that's what the nuns wear. Or is it habit? It's habit, right?
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's called a habit, like the outfit they wear.
Wow.
Habit or a habit?
I don't know.
Habit?
I never even knew that existed until just now.
A habit, hop, a habit, hop. Okay.
The habit to the hip.
So I'm going to go. I'm not going to throw a big one in because I know which ones you're going to go for and what I'm going to go for. I'm going to throw one in that's a little surprising. It's actually a more current franchise.
Okay.
Now, just kind of a lead in. So you had the first one, which was pretty successful. The second film was not successful as the first one, so they kind of scrapped it. Then years down the road, they did a third film, which didn't really contain any of the original contributors, like we talked about, original cast and whatnot. So after the popularity of that film, they had a fourth one, which was okay, but the fifth one of this movie, which is kind of a weird lead-up, the fifth film in this franchise, I think, is the best one because of Delta Force. Just because of the action ramps up, they use a lot more practical effects. It strays away from the sort of intentions of the original film of car racing, and it becomes more of a heist movie. I'm going to say Fast 5, which is my favorite of the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Is this where they intro The Rock, too?
This is the first time The Rock's in it. And the reason I think this one is the best is because The Rock comes in, and he's just like the ultimate badass in this movie before they sort of dilute his character as it goes on to be a little more comedic. So it's him and Vin Diesel going head to head. Paul Walker's in strong form. It's basically a heist movie. They have that great sequence where they take the bank vaults out and they're crashing them against cars, and it opens up with that train sequence where they're driving all the cars off the train onto the desert, and then they go to Brazil and they're running over the building tops and everything. So this one I think is the best Fast and the Furious. I think they have been getting better, pretty much. My brother and I always say that all the odd number Fast and the Furious films are the best. So 1, 3, 5, 7, and then maybe 9. The last one was pretty good though too, that F. Gary Gray directed. But yeah, I just wanted to put this one in the mix.
How many Fast and Furious are there now? 8?
There's 8 now.
Wow.
And so they're, I guess, working on 9. And this one sort of kickstarted the new trilogy. Or I guess, no, I'm sorry. It was 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So yeah. But anyway, just wanted to put this one in here. It might be, a little bit more of a lightweight compared to some of the other ones we have, but I think it's really, really entertaining, and I think it's one of the better, more modern action movies.
All these movies blur to me, so I can't even remember this movie until you just kind of cited some of the scenes. But yeah, I think this whole franchise is pretty entertaining. I don't prefer some of the more CG like superhero stuff they do in it, but I honestly like. I don't know where you go as filmmakers when you make 8 movies if you're trying to keep upping the ante.
Right.
I think it would be really, really hard to do everything practical at some point. So, I understand they're wanting to push the envelope in that way. But yeah, these are entertaining films for sure. And I think it's funny, once The Rock was introduced, I feel like these movies, it's almost like they're like, you can call them a different title now. I mean, they bear like almost zero resemblance to the first, to the first. The first movie looks like an art house film now compared to.
Yeah, it's pretty funny, and I think, I heard on a podcast.
They must make tons of money too.
Oh, they make a ton. They're very, very successful. The one thing I will say about it, and to your point about CGI, they're doing a little bit more of that now. But the reason Fast 5 I think is the best one is there was an interview with the stunt coordinating team on the film. I believe on the side series of How Did This Get Made with Blake J. Harris. And he was talking to the stunt coordinator, and the stunt coordinators were saying, we were brought on this movie after number 4 because, they thought that the movies were getting stale with the CGI and that it was too fake for the audience. They would immediately know, hey, this is CGI. The cars couldn't really do that. What they wanted to bring to it was a little bit more realism, and so they incorporated more practical effects, really did the things with the cars. They shot a test where they took cars with like a fake bank vault hooked to them and did all those stunts to show the studio, like, hey, we can do this with real cars. It's going to look so much better when it's based in reality, and I really think it did, and a great performance by my favorite character in the series, which is Han, who makes his appearance first in Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, but he's played by
Sung. Aren't these movies leading up to Tokyo Drift?
Sung Kang.
Do I have that right?
That is right. So, which is kind of interesting, actually. They were really smart about this as far as the franchise is concerned. So 5 came out, then they did 6, and then at the end of 6 is technically the movie right before Tokyo Drift. The end of 6 leads into, co-leads into Tokyo Drift.
So does 7 and 8 come after Tokyo Drift?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's really cool because the Han character is so good, and
that lead guy from Tokyo Drift has never made his way back into the franchise though. The guy from Friday Night Lights or whatever, Varsity Blues, I can't remember.
Friday Night Lights.
The guy that plays the lead, the American kid that goes to Tokyo in that movie.
Oh yeah. Well, he was supposed to be in Fast and the Furious 8, and I think they cut him out. You're talking about Lucas Black.
Yeah.
God, man, Tokyo Drift, when he can't learn Japanese, like Wabaki.
I'm sure Lucas Black is like, hey, I'm the main character in 3, and you made all these movies, and I haven't made my.
Oh no, I'm sure he has. I mean, they bring back all these random characters for like little side cameos, and just the behind the scenes drama is very entertaining. But yeah, that's one submission into the mix.
Okay. Since you did some honorable mentions, I guess I will do some too. I have a bunch of honorable mentions though, so I'm gonna
roll right through.
I'm gonna blaze through them.
Yeah, blaze through them, man.
Okay.
In a blaze of glory.
I think we talked about this on. God, I can't remember what episode we talked about this on, but Wes Craven's New Nightmare, 1994.
Yep.
We talked about this. Oh, maybe maybe in the 94 movies. I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm not going to talk any more about it than we already have, other than I think we mentioned before. It's really the precursor to those Scream movies, the sort of breaking the third wall horror film, which I think is such a great addition to those Nightmare on Elm Street films. Another one, 10 years later, 2004, Bourne Ultimatum. The second one, believe, right? And
Yeah, Supremacy is the third one.
Yeah,
I think.
And the Bourne series, I really like. I mean, all these movies are great. I just kind of picked Bourne Ultimatum because I thought it was because it came after Bourne Identity. It was a really good follow up to that movie, and honestly, all of them have been really solid films.
Wait, did you say Ultimatum or Supremacy?
I said Ultimatum.
Oh, okay, so Supremacy is the second one.
Okay, Ultimatum is the third. Okay, that's the one I did mean to say. I just didn't put it in the right order. But that one's a great one. I love the new Jason Bourne, and then the one that came, the Jeremy Renner one was fun too. Which I can't remember the name.
Bourne Legacy.
Bourne Legacy. Thank you. Although it is funny, my wife and I we're watching Jason Bourne, and I think I told her, like, you know, all these movies are basically Jason Bourne, like running around, like karate chopping people, and then people in a room looking at a screen.
Yeah, they are.
Find Bourne. Like, it's like
we have to find out what Bourne knows. It's like, well, he
Bourne.
forgot everything. It's like but he's remembering.
Yeah, they kind of blur together. I should watch all of these.
The first one I always thought was really, really good because
yeah.
he looks like a little kid, Matt Damon. He's like so tiny and skinny.
Yeah, and they do some great hand-to-hand combat in these movies, which I love.
I mean, anytime there's
Bourne Ultimatum, I think won Best Editorial too. I think
anytime there's a magazine, he uses it.
Yeah. So another. This is controversial, maybe in terms of a sequel, and you can tell me to go fuck myself if you want. But Scorsese's 1986, The Color of Money with.
That's a sequel to The Hustler.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no controversy there.
I just didn't know. I was like, is this? I couldn't remember if it was like a retelling or if it actually was a sequel, but I thought it was a sequel.
No, yeah, it's the sequel. I mean, The Hustler is a really, really great Paul Newman movie. If you ever see about him,
because Newman plays the same guy, right? He's just older.
Yeah, he plays the same guy. It's in color. Obviously, the original one is not in color, but the original is great though.
It's the black and white of Money.
It is the black and white. Oh, that's pretty funny actually. Yeah. You're right. Yeah. So Paul Newman plays Eddie Felson. Fast Eddie Felson, and then the original he plays pool against Minnesota Fats, but in Color of Money he kind of mentors sort of Tom Cruise.
Minnesota Fats is played by
Jackie Gleason.
Jackie Gleason, right?
Yeah, straight to the moon or whatever the line is.
To the moon, Alice.
To the moon.
Straight to the moon with you.
Straight to the moon with you.
I like that his character was a spouse abuser and then or threatened it. Okay, so another interesting one. I'll just go through all my honorable mentions right now.
Just do them all. Let's just go through them, and we'll get to the heavy hitters. Yeah.
Okay, so Return to Oz in 1985.
Okay.
A sequel to Wizard of Oz.
Is that the one with Fairuza Balk?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was directed by Walter Murch, which is the only movie he's ever directed.
In the blink of an eye.
Yeah, the editor.
Famous editor
who stands up and edits. Has worked on a lot of Francis Ford Coppola movies.
Yeah, and read his book In the Blink of an Eye about his theory of editing.
Yeah, but this is actually directed by him, which I thought was really interesting. I did not realize that because it actually is. If you watch that movie as a standalone movie, it's like the production design, the tone of the movie is really, really interesting.
It's kind of dark, right?
And I like how if you watch Wizard of Oz, if you've seen it and they go back and Oz is like really like decrepit, like the Yellow Brick Road is torn apart, like everything is in dismay, and those wheelers are really creepy. Like the whole movie has got just a really, like if you were like definitely like high or something, this movie might actually might give you some nightmares. But I think it's a really cool addition to that movie. I think some of the newer Oz movies have kind of lacked in. Yeah,
the Great and Powerful Oz with James Franco was just bad.
And the Wizard of Oz, there's a ton of books. There's a lot of great material. I don't know how they get this wrong all the time, like or not all the time.
That's a franchise they could have like redone and done it with respect.
I think they should bring it back. I think the kids I think it's a good movie to reintroduce, like almost like Harry Potter style. I think
if they did, if they had the guys from Harry Potter and had them do it like that producing team, that would be really sweet. I think.
So the last couple ones, Gremlins 2,
okay.
1990. I think it's such a cool addition to Gremlins 1.
Mm-hmm.
I wish they would have made a Gremlins 3, but
Phoebe
sadly
Cates.
we have not had that. And if you haven't seen the Gremlins 2 sketch on Key and Peele, I highly recommend it. Gremlins 2 is great because they up the ante in so many ways, and they add a bunch of new Gremlins to it, like just weird like Bat Gremlins, and there's like a Donald Trump Gremlin in there, I think, or Donald Trump's, I can't remember. There's it's just. It's really, really funny and kooky and kind of takes the zaniness of the first one and ups the ante for sure. Also directed by Joe Dante, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah. And Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Oh, yeah.
So this one's interesting. I think we might have mentioned this in John Carpenter. He did not direct this movie, but he was, I think, produced it or involved. And the Halloween 3 has no Michael Myers in it, and I think that's really interesting. And I kind of wish there's a part of me that wishes Michael Myers wasn't as popular, and this idea of making every Halloween movie a different Halloween story,
Almost like an anthology.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, would have been really rad. And I think they tried on this one. I think this one I think the idea was there, and I think the movie is fun. Like if you're a Halloween fan, like as like a departure. But I think if this movie was a little more successful, where it had a little more, if it could have outpowered the mystique of Michael Myers, this could have been what all the other movies would be.
That would have been really cool. Tom Atkins is really good in this movie. The lead actor, he plays the emergency room doctor.
Blade 2.
Oh yeah, that's
directed by not
Gore Verbinski. Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. Guillermo del Toro. I think this one actually, Blade 1 is great, but this one is like, I don't know if it's better, but it's...
I love
it's,
vampires. I love.
But the practical effects they did, like the weird vampires, their mouths open up, like...
Yeah, that was cool.
This is a good one. This is really, really fun. It's worth... I think Blade 3 is okay.
It's not terrible. It's not as bad as people say. I mean, it's
got
just...
Ryan Reynolds and Patton Oswalt. And,
Jessica Biel.
And but this one is really good. I think I would dare say it's actually better than the first one.
Okay. You don't like Stephen Dorff in the first one?
No, he's fine.
Or Chris Christopherson?
You need the first one to have this one. I mean,
right.
But I think this is a really good follow-up. 28 Weeks Later is great. Mm-hmm. Great follow-up to 28 Days Later. I think those movies, I think there should be another 28 something later, and
28 years later.
Yeah, they should flesh out the trilogy. And then the last one I'll say is Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey,
right,
1991. And I would say normally this would be like just a money-making sequel, but I think if you go back and watch this, the addition of the Death character, who's super funny,
William Sadler,
really cool, just a really cool addition. I think makes it,
they sort of
makes the movie that much more entertaining.
Sort of poke fun at Ingmar Bergman's famous Seventh Seal,
right?
Chess match with death.
And it made me not fear death. Sorry. Anyway, those are my honorable mentions. I want to roll through those because I think there's so many great sequels.
There are a lot.
I think those are worth mentioning.
I have a lot of honorable mentions as well. So what's your next pick?
So
Throw a big one.
So next pick is, these are all heavy hitters to me, so I'm not even going to back away. You know what I'm going to go with? Die Hard with a Vengeance.
Nice.
1995, directed by John McTiernan, who directed the first one. I love Die Hard with a Vengeance. I love Die Hard. Die Hard 1, for the record, is the best action movie of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
That's there's a lot of action movies we can debate. I can listen to what you're saying, but in the end, I'm going to say Die Hard 3. Die Hard 2. Die Harder. I believe that's what it's called. With the airplane is pretty fun. I'll be honest with you. It's
I always thought it was
Rennie Harlan joint. Pretty good addition to the sequel.
Also, William Sadler from Bill and Ted 2. He's the villain in that one. He's like the general. The guy who plays Death.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's
wow.
William Sadler. Yeah.
Nice segue. I didn't even plan that. But Die Hard 3, I think having John McTiernan back in the fold is really sets this movie apart from the second one. I think this movie could stand on its own. Like it's a
it totally
could.
Like, yeah.
It could be called Two Guys in New York, and
well, technically, it was on its own because it's based on a screenplay called Simon Says that they turned into. They kind of added McClane into and then changed Jeremy Irons' performance into like Hans Gruber's brother.
Right, I forgot about that. And that whole like connection when you find that out is really rad. But I just like that he kind of creates havoc all around New York City. And then the best part about this movie to me is it captures the essence, like we were saying before, of the sequels, which is John McClane gets put into a situation he does not want to be in, and he's forced to, do the best he can to save the day, essentially. And when he gets paired with Samuel L. Jackson through happenstance, which is the beginning, I think this has one of the best openings of a movie ever, when they put him in his boxers and make him wear that sandwich board with the N-word on it in the middle of Harlem or whatever it is.
That's right. He's undercover.
And Samuel L. Jackson, gets involved and protects him from getting, basically murdered by the people, the neighborhood. Everyone lives in the neighborhood, and from that point forward, Simon, the Jeremy Irons Karen, the bad guy, doing all the, trying to basically he's trying to steal a bunch of gold and trying to thwart the police from seeing, from detecting what he's doing, or trying to basically distract them. And they have to pair up and basically save the day. And those two guys they're diametrically opposed. It's almost like buddy cop.
Yeah, their performances are really black and white. I mean,
dynamic. And this is a big movie for Samuel Jackson because previously to this, he was in movies, obviously, but this is like a lot of screen time for him, and I think this kind of helped him.
Right. I mean,
become more of the playing Zeus in this movie. But I love this movie. I think it's a great sequel. I think it can stand on its own. It could, like I said, it could be called something else. Like you said, it could be Simon Says, and they could be like, John Patrick and whatever. I think it's a great movie. So,
yeah. Well, a few things before we move on. The reason I like this movie is John McClane in the first one, he's in Los Angeles, and you kind of get an idea that he's like a grizzled New York City, detective, and he's got that New York sensibility about him. But in this movie, he really is full New York. I mean, he's kind of disgruntled. He's like, got the 5 o'clock shadow. He's kind of like, I got to get up from work.
Got a big fucking headache.
Oh my God. Yeah. So like, he's great in this movie for that reason.
In a quarter, got to call my wife.
That's a great ending with the helicopter
right.
up. Yeah.
And he sees the bottom of the
what is it, like the cap?
The bottom of the bottle.
Right.
What's the clue on the bottom? I can't remember now.
It's bottom of the
Tylenol bottle. Someone gives him like Advil or something. He's like, I'm gonna have a big fucking headache. And
I feel like in any movie where a lead character is supposed to be like a tough guy, because I take headache medicine, I take pain medicine sometimes. I don't know like how tough I would have to be be like, all right, give me some of that Advil, I'm gonna chew it, because they always chew it. They like pop it in their mouth and they chew it just to be like really cool.
Yeah. Maybe that helps you defeat your headache faster.
I guess so. But yeah, Jeremy Irons is awesome in this movie.
Really
New York is great. I think the fact that McTiernan comes back just brings it up to a whole nother level. It really fits well with the first one. And then the last thing I'll say, the reason I love it is what Die Hard, the first one, did was created a trope that many, many action movies did, which I'm sure it wasn't the first time it was used, but where the bad guy is constantly talking to the good guy through like a phone or some other means where they're sort of sparring back and forth. In a wrestling term, they're cutting promos on each other before they finally meet at the end. Right. And what was cool is his brother Simon is basically doing the same thing, but he's using like almost like a scavenger hunt where he's like making him go do all these little tasks.
Simon Says.
Yeah, remember he had to like weigh like the milk gallons with water and so he's doing all these really cool things around New York City. They put that
big thing in the school where you think it's a bomb, and then it ends up being just like jelly or grape juice or something.
Yeah, and it's a little nod, I think. I mean, I could be taking this a little too far, but the first Dirty Harry, Scorpio, the Scorpio killer, is making Clint Eastwood run over the city and answer phones at different places. And if he doesn't make it there, he's going to like kill the hostage. So, really, really cool.
And it's all in an effort to steal the gold, like to...
Right. Is it just to distract him, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, which is great. It's really smart. Great one. So yeah, Die Hard with a Vengeance, Empire Strikes Back, and Fast
Die
5.
Hard with a Vengeance.
I'm going to really roll through some honorable mentions, like Mark said, because I just want to get to the heavy hitters and not keep this too long. Speaking of Nightmare on Elm Street, just a little quick mention to Dream Warriors. That was a fun one with Arquette. Mm-hmm. Superman 2 with the introduction of Zod. By Terrence Stamp. The director's...
I love the scene where he throws his S. And it's like becomes like a cellophane.
Yeah, that's so weird. Crank 2, kind of a fun one. Out of that. Devil's Rejects.
Which I think make a Crank 3 though.
Yeah, they do to make one. The Devil's Rejects by Rob Zombie, I think, is better than the House of a Thousand Corpses.
Yeah, different tone.
Very different tone. Very
more
different,
like
westerny.
Yeah, more like almost
dirty.
Real, like more.
It is very realistic. Yeah. I feel like that's what a crazed family of serial killers would look like.
It's actually more scary, I think, because the other one seems so like
goofy.
Over the top.
I really applauded Clint Eastwood for his respect of the Japanese culture. So in Flags of Iwo Jima, which is a companion piece to Flags of Our Fathers, it was all in Japanese, which I thought was awesome, and they had subtitles with Ken Watanabe.
Someone translate for me.
I need a translator.
And get off my lawn.
One thing you can't translate is badass.
Is being on my lawn.
So yeah, that one, I just, a little nod. I think it was great.
You love Clint Eastwood. I like it.
Yeah, no, I love him. This one, It's I'm going to say it as a pair because I think they're very, very well done in this franchise.
Analyze that.
Analyze that. You're good. You're good, you. Rocky Balboa and Creed. I
Okay.
think Rocky Balboa was very, very well done by Sylvester Stallone. I think, and
You're
Creed.
right, because it could have been a dump.
It could have really been a dump, but
Yeah.
he kind of embraced the HBO version of boxing, which made it a little bit more real. It wasn't so
Right.
cinematic. And
Like at the end. when
at the end,
it's like
yeah,
a video.
And I really
Yeah.
loved that he cast Milo Ventimiglia as his son, and they had sort of like that father-son conflict going on, and
His real son was his son in the fifth one, but he died.
he
though,
passed
right?
away. Yeah. And there's that great moment.
tragic.
The best scene in that movie is when they're in front of Adrian's, and he's like, it's not about how hard you get hit. It's that you keep getting back up.
Right.
You know, whatever that speech was.
Creed's great though.
Creed is really good too.
Yeah.
I mean, those two movies. I mean,
I can't wait for Black Panther.
yeah, Black Panther's going to be great. And I saw Sylvester Stallone on Instagram was teasing Creed going up against Drago now. Michael B. Jordan fighting Drago, like to avenge his father, which would have been really
An
cool.
old Drago.
Yeah, that'd be pretty crazy. Or maybe Drago has a son
Yeah.
and they fight each other, and then Stallone gets into a
What if
fist
his
fight.
son
in a
is like super fat and short? He's
that'd be really. He'd be like, "This is my son."
you. He sounds like
That would be really
the guy
good.
from Rocky and Bullwinkle.
Last honorable.
I heard Rambo is actually in Black Panther. He fights Black Panther at the end. Spoiler alert.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
That could be pretty crazy.
Sorry.
I talked about Before Sunrise before, the Richard Linklater joint with
Right.
Ethan Hawke and Julie Delpy. Some people say you watch Before Sunrise in your 20s. You watch Before Sunset in your 20s. Before Sunrise when you turn 30 because you're a little bit older and wiser. And a lot of people don't like the ending, the sort of ambiguous ending. But like I said before, I just kind of choose
I haven't
this-
watched these films. I should do it though.
Yeah, check them out.
They've been highly recommended.
Highly recommended. Man, there's a couple here that are heavy hitters that I don't really want to go into, but
You got to, man.
Hunger Games: Catching Fire. I
We're
really
talking
love
about the history of cinema.
Sam Claflin. I love the sequel of Hunger Games. I think that's probably the best one.
Which one?
The second one of Hunger Games. It's a little more epic, different director.
What is that called? One.
Catching Fire.
Okay.
That one, they have like the water. They start in the water.
There's 4 of those, right?
Well, technically there's 3, and the third one has
Split
2
them in
parts.
2. Yeah.
My favorite are 2 and 4. But I mean the first one's great too. All right, so you already said Empire Strikes Back. I'm not going to go artsy because everyone probably knows our top 3, top 4. I'm just going to go one just because I have to talk about Spielberg. I love this one. It's one of the most. So the first film in this franchise is a classic. It's pretty much almost a perfect movie. But the third one brings a little bit more of a comedic sensibility to it, and you're combining 2 of the most famous actors, tough guys, just sort of screen presences ever into one movie. And as Mark said, which I think it does so brilliantly, is this film starts back in time and gives you a little insight into the character, and then brings you full circle back to the present time. And that would be Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Great pick.
I really love this movie. Just God, there's just so much about this movie that there's. You have the opening with River Phoenix.
Great opening.
Great opening.
Yeah. I love how it gives you the insight on like why he's like afraid of why he hates snakes and like the whole like whip thing with the lion. Like almost every compartment he falls into in the circus train gives you a little.
Yeah, it's it's so brilliant on that too because you have it shows you why Harrison Ford. I mean, it makes sense about his scar on his chin because he gets smacked with the whip. Alison Doody is really great as Elsa, the Nazi sort of femme fatale of the movie.
Yeah.
Did she
sleeps
sleep
with both of them?
Well, I was going to say
Yeah,
she
yeah.
sleeps with both of
Yeah.
them, which is great. I love
Yeah.
that. Jonathan Rhys-Davies is still great as Sala, and then Julian Glover is sort of the villain in that film. They couldn't have picked a better MacGuffin than the Holy Grail,
Right.
Which is awesome. And that whole end sequence. Oh man, there's so many good
And
sequences.
Nazis being involved again.
Nazis being involved again, and this is the one where you actually see Hitler up close, right? I believe
Yes,
they're at they're burning books.
The book burning, yeah, and then he walks up and he's just trying to make it through the crowd with the Nazi uniform on, so he's not detected.
That's right.
And then he like ends up bumping into Hitler, and then Hitler like grabs his book and he's all afraid. Then he just signs it and he gives it back to him.
Man, what a great scene, especially like
Yeah.
for how much Indiana Jones hates Nazis, and he's like right in front of Hitler. The whole scene with Connery with the umbrella with the seagulls.
Right.
Great
comedy for sure.
No, really great comedy, great action. I mean, these two guys are just so good on screen together.
Papers, please.
Papers, Please.
Didn't have his papers.
Didn't have his papers.
Right.
But yeah, no, I really love this film. As Steven Spielberg himself will say, if you watch interviews with him, he didn't want to make another Indiana Jones after this. He said, I filmed him riding off into the sunset because that was the ending.
Right.
George Lucas pushed him to do the next one. He didn't even want it. He didn't want to do Aliens. He didn't want to do George Lucas's idea, but he ended up acquiescing because Lucas just wanted to make the movie. And it's really funny. If you see interviews...
I wish they didn't do the Aliens in that one, because I like a lot of that movie.
No, I really like a lot of Crystal Skull, and Spielberg...
I hate the monkey thing, and I don't like the aliens part, but everything else I thought was pretty enjoyable.
The funny thing is, it's very, very Spielberg up until
Yeah.
the monkeys part, and then you can tell it kind of goes to
Yeah.
the wayside. And Spielberg even, I mean, he'll say, he's like, I didn't want to do aliens, and then George comes back and goes, oh no, they're interdimensional beings, then he like rolls his eyes.
Right.
And he's like, all right, well, I got to do it, I guess. But I understand it, because I could see Spielberg being like, I don't want to go and have another director do this, but... so yeah, Last Crusade, great sequel. I'm not going to say too much more about it.
A couple things I'll say. I love this movie. I would dare say I love Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
I kind of like this movie like nth degree more than that.
Yeah, it's very
and I'm
close.
not saying the Raiders of the Lost Ark is bad, because I love Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah, it's very close.
And again, you can't have The Last Crusade without, and I think this is going to be controversial to a lot of people. I love Raiders of the Lost Ark. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not saying this is like a huge but just as a movie I would rewatch and rewatch and rewatch. If I picked one, it would be this one over Raiders of the Lost Ark, even though, again, I love it. I do wish that because these two movies are so solid, I do wish that Temple of the Doom was a better movie. Temple of the Doom has a lot of great parts in it. There's a lot of great comedy. The fucking monkey brains and the snakes just grosses me out beyond.
Kalima.
So I have a hard time watching that part.
Kalima.
But Last Crusade, his dichotomy with Sean Connery, perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect casting.
We named the dog Indiana.
And I say one of the most touching moments. And
I know where you're
not to
going.
be sappy,
And I'm going to start crying.
I love the part at the end when they're getting out of when so they find the Holy Grail. They find the knight who's been guarding the Grail the whole time. Indiana Jones, if you haven't seen it, he ends up. There's a bunch of whatever. I'm not going to say the plot, but anyway, he ends up finding the Holy Grail. Indiana Jones guesses right. He guesses the right chalice that Jesus drank from, which is like just a simple like clay bowl looking thing. And at the end of the movie, the Nazis like take the thing from him. The the cave starts to collapse around them, and Sean Connery, who's been injured, and Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones have to make it out, and the chalice gets knocked out of the hands of one of the Nazis and ends up like kind of within like inches from Indiana Jones's grasp, and he wants to grab it because the Joneses, their whole thing is like history needs to be shown to the people. It needs to this stuff belongs in a museum. And I like how the movie, Sean Connery, you can tell his character, he's imparted this wisdom and imparted this idea to Harrison Ford to always look, to always find these artifacts, to go to the nth degree. And he has like within his grasp almost the Holy Grail, and it's about to fall into like an endless pit. And he goes out to reach it, and he can't grab it. And then his father, Sean Connery, tells him to let it go. And I think that's like one of the best.
Oh,
I think it's like that moment where their relationship is like he's like, because you can tell that they build this up where he feels like all this pressure to do well by his dad. I think like a lot of sons want to do when they get older is to do well by their father, like to impart the wisdom that they share with them to their children or whatever. And I think in that one moment he releases him of the pressures of being the son of Henry, and I think that's like one of the best parts of that movie. And it's like such a
No, I love that part.
The whole movie is finding this, and the Holy Grail, and I don't mean to be cheesy, but symbolically the Holy Grail is really
the
their
father-son.
relationship. Yeah.
The Holy Grail is definitely the father-son dynamic and the love. And if you notice throughout the whole movie, he always calls him Junior.
Right.
And he's like, Dad, stop calling me Junior. That's not my name. And at the end, when he's wanting to hold
Indiana.
it, he knows his son might die,
Right.
and he's like Indiana. And then that's when he turns.
Right.
And he pulls him up.
It's almost like he's an equal. He's like I'm not your dad anymore. I'm like a
Fellow explorer, archaeologist.
Like I'm going to call you Indiana. And
we named the dog
respect
Indiana.
your right, respect your wishes to be called Indiana. And then
then there's the great little turn that Elsa, who's just greedy and wants the
Yeah.
Holy Grail, she goes for it and she dies.
Right.
Falls down the pit.
I love this movie a lot. It's a great sequel. It's going to be in the top 5. I'm going to spoiler alert.
Yeah, it's so good. But yeah, let's continue.
Okay. Good one there.
Thank you.
God, I just thinking about that ending.
I got to rewatch that
Makes
movie.
me wanna-
I might have to watch it today or something. I might go cry after this.
I'm crying right now. All right, the next one I'm going to talk about
I just hope you choose wisely.
is he chose poorly.
Great death too by that guy when he like just basically turns into nothing, just vaporizes. It goes
It's one
from
of the best gifts of all time.
That's so great.
The next one I'm going to go with is The Dark Knight in 2008, directed by Christopher Nolan.
Yep. Yep.
Neil hates this movie, but we're going to talk about it anyway.
Oh no, I'm a huge Batman fan.
I'm just kidding. So real quickly,
I'm a man of my word.
Real quickly, to me, the best Batman movie and one of my favorite movies of all time is the original, well, not original, but Tim Burton 1989
Right.
with the Joker. When this movie was coming out, I loved Batman Begins.
Let's mention Batman Returns too, just because it is a great.
Yeah,
it is kind of a cool
Batman
sequel.
Returns is a great sequel.
A little bit more Tim Burton in that one too. He got a little
Yeah.
kookier.
Yeah, the whole production design of that movie is really, really.
Yeah, I
really
rewatched it the other day,
masterful.
and actually, it's really dirty too. The Penguin is really, really sexual.
Yeah, he's creepy,
but it's great.
Michelle Pfeiffer's great as Catwoman. That's a good sequel. I had there were so many. I was like, I'm going to talk about Batman already. So, but that you're right. Batman Returns is a great sequel. I wish Tim Burton would have done a third one.
Yeah, just kind of
looking
close
back
out
on
the
it.
trilogy.
But I'm glad Christopher Nolan came back and made this franchise and made this character more relevant than what Joel Schumacher did. I don't disrespect what Joel Schumacher did. I but it's not my flavor of Batman. So I will say for The Dark Knight, see Batman Begins. I think that came out in 2005.
That's a really great movie too.
Batman Begins is a really good movie. I really enjoyed it, but it wasn't like I'm a huge Batman fan, so I enjoyed it. But I don't think it was like in the zeitgeist. It wasn't like, hey, everyone go see Batman Begins. Dark Knight killed it. Dark Knight like brought everyone to the theater to watch this. I mean, this is like a huge movie, and I think one of the big reasons for that is Heath Ledger and his turn as the Joker. Now, it doesn't hurt or help, or it doesn't hurt that he, was so. Once he passed away, I mean, this was that was kind of the buzz around this movie too. Was like
Right.
this is like his last like.
But not
role.
to take away from his performance, which was great.
Right.
Because it was a Joker that no one had seen before. Everyone sort of did it
Yeah.
as this theatrical clown. Even Jack Nicholson. I mean, he was a little darker, but Jack Nicholson and I can't believe I'm forgetting his name right now.
The Italian guy.
Yeah, I'm completely. Cesar Romero.
Yeah.
So both of them were very clown-like, but then I remember too, and this is so funny because the same thing with Wonder Woman. Everyone just like went ape shit on the internet when Heath Ledger was casted. Like, you're going to cast the guy from Brokeback Mountain who was gay and like he's not an actor and blah blah blah. And he was just, I mean, he killed it.
Yeah, he killed it, and part of why he killed it is Chris Nolan gave him the tools, which I think Chris Nolan and his brother wrote a script that they wrote him specifically as an anarchist, which I think is so powerful in this movie because he keeps on saying, you want to know how I got these scars? And he tells a story, and you're like, oh, that's crazy. Like, you had a fucked up childhood. And then he tells someone else a different story, and then he's going to tell someone else a different story. And you realize that this guy is a like, it's like Christopher Nolan. Like, this is what I hate about a lot of comic book movies is they go so crazy into the origin story and trying to explain people's motivation that they like kind of like sort of water down their story. And I think this takes a big dump on that. They're just like,
or it's scarier.
This guy he's not out for money. He's not out for power. He's out for pure chaos.
Yeah, he's just
and
unstable.
anarchy. And that makes him even more frightening. And which is the complete opposite of Dark Batman, where he's trying to bring stability in his life. He actually doesn't even want to be Batman anymore. You know what I mean? He's trying to rid Gotham of all this terror.
I wish they would have had a little bit more of Two-Face. I really like Two-Face. I wish they wouldn't have killed him.
Yeah, they kind of tagged it on at the end. I
Because
wish
he could have led into the third one.
I was gonna say it could have continued in the third one, and maybe had like his demise or something at the end or at the beginning or sort of you know what I mean at the.
It would have been cool, like especially
bridge to it.
Yeah, that would have been cool. And then, like we said, we kind of tease it in the beginning. The only other real problem I have with this movie, because I love it, is I just wish they wouldn't have recast Katie Holmes. Like, I know people didn't like her performance.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think Maggie Gyllenhaal is not the right person for this movie, and especially for Bruce Wayne. And
and Maggie Gyllenhaal is a great actress.
I
know what you're saying.
Yeah, it just it definitely it's one
I
of
wonder
those
why
things.
Katie Holmes didn't do that movie.
Well, they didn't let her do it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think
they purposely.
I think he just
recast her.
didn't. Yeah, he didn't want her to be in it. I mean, I didn't think she was bad in Batman Again. She was fine. I mean, I know the whole thing with Batman is he's got a saver throughout the entire movie, Maggie Gyllenhaal. I don't see what Katie Holmes would have done any different. I mean,
Right.
But I mean, yeah, Maggie Gyllenhaal is great actress.
Great Chicago scenery in this too. Maybe one of the best like downtown, like
Yeah, they have
with
that great
whole-
shot on
whole
LaSalle
Wacker chase.
with the financial district right there.
Yeah, when they flip the semi,
cool.
that's one of the best. That's like just a great scene in a movie.
What a great
One of the best.
stunt.
Yeah, shot a lot of this on IMAX, which is really.
That's the other thing I'm going to say. The reason this movie is so great is it was a spectacle because they would tease it out in the IMAXs with the first 7 minutes, like the whole bank robbery scene.
Bank robbery was great.
Yeah, with
Very Michael Mann, I think.
Very Michael Mann,
No.
very Heat, and then
Yeah.
Christopher Nolan obviously borrowing and paying homage to Stanley Kubrick's The Killing with the clown masks.
But this whole trilogy is a masterful stroke from Christopher Nolan to me, and I hate
One long, slow, powerful stroke.
one up and down stroke. Just because I feel like he's made a character that's a comic book, a larger than life, fictitious character, and set it into like the most realistic setting I think he could have, because when you think about like the second one, you're just afraid, you're the fear of a loose cannon like that. That no one can control is quite scary. And then the third one is like, you have Bane and you have a lot like more of a terrorist element, which is like definitely like, in people's minds right now. But just real quick, did you say out of the three of these, the Chris Nolan Batmans, this is your favorite?
Yeah, it's very close to the Batman Begins because I love origin stories. I always feel like the first film in a lot of franchises normally is the best one because I like when you create a world. I always feel like that's always interesting, and some sequels just don't do a better job. But yeah, I would say this is probably my favorite out of the three. It's very close between Batman Begins and this one. And I'm excited. Nolan is working on remastering Dark Knight in 4K for release, which would be really cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's what he's doing currently.
But yeah, there's nothing more I can really say about Dark Knight. I'm a huge Batman fan. I'm really glad that they did justice. I'm excited to see what, because they're going to, obviously they have, they're doing the Justice League and the Batman films right now. I'm excited to see what the standalone Batman movie is going to be. I'm a little bummed that Ben Affleck is not directing it, but hopefully it'll be cool.
I am too, but Matt Reeves, I think, is going to do a great job. He just recently directed War for the Planet of the Apes, and he was interviewed as saying he wants to do it as a more of a film noir detective Batman, which I think is the one fault of Batman as a whole that no movie has really gotten right, is he is the world's greatest detective, and they never really show him doing detective work.
Right.
And I feel like that's the thing that
And
that
actually,
Batman's
it's funny.
missing.
If anything, the Joel Schumacher movies may show more of that because he deals with the Riddler and like there's like a lot of like problems. I don't know, but yeah. So go ahead.
Yeah, great pick. There's just so many movies here, and I think we're going to kind of have to gloss over some of them just because of time. We don't want to make it too long, but I'm just going to roll through a lot of honorable mentions. Some of you may think that this is the best sequel for these movies, and I apologize, but just not on my favorites. So I'm just going to kind of go through them quickly. Evil Dead 2, Lethal Weapon 2, talking about diplomatic immunity. It's one of really, really great sequel. Captain America Winter Soldier, Dawn of the Dead, sort of a great follow-up to Night of the Living Dead, where it's in color. It has that famous trope of being in one location in the mall, by George Romero, great effects by Tom Savini. So wanted to mention Dawn of the Dead is a sequel. Star Trek II, Wrath of Khan, Ricardo Montalban, great as Khan, sort of a classic, sequel, I suppose.
The plane.
I really enjoyed Brad Bird's Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, where Tom Cruise climbs the Burj Khalifa, and Paula Patton is in it, and Jeremy Renner. I thought that was a really great Mission Impossible sequel right after the third one by J.J. Abrams. So I just wanted to quickly mention that one. I will mention just Kill Bill 2 very quickly, and for my friends that give me shit about not liking Lord of the Rings, I'll just mention Lord of the Rings Return of the King because it won all those Oscars, but I still will not put it on my list.
The second one, Two Towers, is my favorite. Of
And
the
Two
two.
Towers
I know
is
it's like one big
entertaining.
thing, but the Battle at Helm's Deep is like one of the best.
Yeah, I might like that one better than the third
night,
one, actually.
The night one where it's raining. And
Yeah, that's a good one. Bad Boys 2 is kind of a fun one as well. And then John Wick 2 recently.
Bad Boys 2, you just glossed over like that?
Well, I was going to put it
Bad
in
Boys 2 is kind of fun.
Well, I was going to put it in the mix, but I'm not sure. John Wick 2, I just recently saw, and that one I thought was really entertaining. It does what I just said, where it expands the universe. You get to see a little bit more about it, which I thought
He
they
punches
did.
more people in the head with a gun.
Punches more people in the head with the gun, that's correct.
People keep asking me if I'm back again.
And I think that's it for honorable mentions, actually, because the rest of mine are all heavy hitters. One of them I do want to ask you a question about, and I hope it's not on your list because I think it should be in a different thing. Some people technically call this a sequel. I personally do not think it's a sequel. Silence of the Lambs, which is I just don't think I don't think it's a true sequel, because Manhunter was made with Brian Cox, different actor playing it, and it failed. And then Silence of the Lambs was sort of a reboot, and it was from a different book. And the book I don't know.
Yeah, it's well, then you have the Red Dragon, which is really Manhunter,
Right. I just don't.
and then different director, different. But the books are. I mean, the characters are different too. So that's a hard one.
Yeah. So I'm just.
I think if they had continuing, well, I guess Hannibal is the.
I think Silence of the Lambs is sort of a standalone. So I just wanted to mention it that some people call it a sequel, but that's for another day.
I would agree with you. I think that's a little loose to be.
That should be in our best, serial killer hunting movies.
Yeah. If anything, Hannibal is like a sequel to.
Yeah.
So,
all right. So let's see here. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 movies left that I want to submit. So I'm just trying to decide which one to go.
damn, I have like 6 movies, but I'm not gonna mention all of them.
All right. I'm just going to go kind of classic. I'm going to go Godfather Part 2.
On my list.
By Francis Ford Coppola. Also a Best Picture Oscar winner. Now, here's a controversial opinion. Obviously considered one of the greatest movies of all time, one of the greatest sequels. You have the awesome performance by Robert De Niro playing a young Vito Corleone. A little trivia fact for you guys, if you want to impress your friends. Robert De Niro and Marlon Brando are the only 2 actors to have won a Best Oscar for playing the same character in separate movies. So that's kind of a great trivia fact there. Here's a controversial opinion. Everyone thinks that Godfather Part 2 is the better film. I actually like Godfather better, the first one, just because you have James Caan playing Sonny Corleone. You have
I would say you're right.
Marlon
you can't
Brando.
have 2 without the first one, but
yeah,
I mean,
exactly. And I get that Michael Corleone is a little bit more mature, and it furthers the story of the second one. And then you get, like we talked about, it goes back in time, sort of like Last Crusade. I just think the first one's better. It has more classic moments to me. Maybe Godfather Part 2 is a little more technically. It's technically more proficient.
It's a little more. It's a little bigger.
A little
grander,
bigger.
Yeah.
But I really, man, that first Godfather, man, it's just.
I would agree with that because I like. Not that I don't like Robert De Niro, but I like Vito as an older man. Like I like the.
Came to my daughter's wedding. The day of my daughter's wedding. I have cotton balls in my mouth. You wanna come to me?
I thought he was so old in that movie too, but when you look back, you're like, hey, he's not that old.
It's all
they made him look old.
Man, talking about what's his name, Marlon Brando in the first movie. It's just so funny. He was so bad at knowing his lines. Like there's a scene when he's in the garden when he's talking to Michael, and they had a giant tarp on the wall in front of him that you see you can't see, that's off camera, with his lines painted super big because he's so bad. I mean, in other movies he wears earpieces because and it's so funny. Like everyone who he's one of the people that everyone considers one of the greatest actors of all time, and he cannot remember any of his lines. I heard the same thing about Johnny Depp.
It is funny how people went way out of their way to work with this guy that seemed really incredibly hard to do work with.
Well, yeah, he seemed very hard to work with. Even on Apocalypse Now, Coppola couldn't get him to do all the monologues, so like he basically just improv'd.
Right.
So,
but I will say back to your point, I agree with you. I think this one is more as a favorite of mine. It's more of a favorite than the second one, and I'll tell you why. Because Michael Corleone's arc in this one is more interesting to me than the backstory of Vito. But I do think this is one of the best sequels of all time. This only because I like the way they did go back and tell his story, because you get a little more of an understanding of who the Godfather's how he became,
like how all this started,
who he is, and really you get to see the ripple effect of his decision, in terms of his family. But yeah, the Sonny scene where he gets shot up in the first one in the toll booth or whatever, like
then the whole leave the gun, take the cannoli.
The ending isn't the end where Diane Keaton is like
that great shot where like the door closes,
ushered out of the room, and and then she just sees like her husband is totally
that's
totally
a great
transition to
it's a heel turn.
Yeah.
I mean it's the ultimate heel turn, and then the whole ending of the first one, which I think the second one doesn't really have, is when he puts that whole like kill order into motion, and then it's that great almost Silence of the Lambs, to call back to it, where one thing's happening, but then you're cutting back and forth of just people getting murdered.
I mean, you're right. I'm thinking about the first one now, and the scene where he, like the first thing he carries out, which is killing the
What's his name? Like Abruzzi or something? Or no?
Yeah, Luca Brasi.
Yeah, Luca Brasi.
And
yeah,
and the police.
He's gonna sleep with the fishes.
Yeah, and the gun is like taped to the toilet, and he brings it out and kills both. I mean, and then he's off to Italy or whatever to hide out, and then he meets a new lady and.
Oh, he kills Salazzo and McCluskey.
He meets a new lady, right? And then they get married in Italy, right? And then she gets killed, right?
In the first one?
In the first one. Because he kills Luca Brasi and the police officer, and then he basically he hightails it to Sicily to hide out, basically. And then he marries like an Italian woman.
Yeah, it's
and then she gets killed in they explode the car. Like he's supposed to be in the car with her, and they.
Yeah, it says he gets married to Apollo.
You're right. The second one's great. I think it's going to be in our top 5, I'm sure, but I think the first one is,
Yeah, not diminishing its importance. I mean, if you look at any list of best sequels of all time, and it's usually in the top 5, maybe even 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And it did win Best Picture.
It's a shame that 3 isn't as good. Although 3, compared to a lot of movies, is a good movie. Like, it just happens that it has to stand in a... it has to stand along with those two juggernauts.
Just wanted to mention it, though. I know it's in most people's.
And I have to say, I love Sofia Coppola as a director. She's not a good actress, though.
No, she got poured over. What is it? Poured over the coals? Hung over the coals?
Yeah,
hung over the coals for that movie, and I'm sure that affected her. But she can survive. I mean, she's in the Coppola family. Another thing, a little trivia fact here. Actually, I'm not going to say it because I'm going to save it for my trivia podcast and see if people know.
Okay.
All right. Just going to say it there.
Thanks.
It has to do with Coppola, though.
Thanks. Okay. Next one I'm going to mention is Aliens from '86.
Oh, great.
Directed by Jimmy Cameron.
He might make an appearance twice on this episode.
Probably.
Great pick.
I'm not going to go too far into Aliens. If you haven't seen it, definitely check it out. What I like about the Aliens, I'm going to say trilogy, although there's more of them, but I want to just focus on the three. The three is, I love how these movies are directed by some of the best directors of all time. Like the first one, Ridley Scott; second one, James Cameron; third one, Fincher, and they all have a tone. Like they all have like a palette and a very unique tone. I love how the first one is more suspense driven, more horror. More obviously an origin. More of a
it's like Jaws.
Kind of a slow unfolding. And I love how the second one, they did right by the second one, and they said, "Hey, you already know the aliens character. Let's ratchet up the action." And I think James Cameron was like the perfect director. I think this was his third film. So, excuse me. I think after Terminator he made this. I'm pretty sure. And I just think this is a great film. I love the last sequence where she fights the Queen Alien with the big big mech suit or whatever it is.
Shoot, yeah, this is a great movie.
And I think this is what put James Cameron on the map too. This is really like definitely what like kind of catapulted him into that.
I mean, it's the
tier
action
directing.
movie Alien. I mean, you have like you said, the first one's suspense, second one's action.
And the third one has its own tone, which I love, and it's more grimy. Like it's a lot more David. It's like a more Finch. It's it's like a Nine Inch Nails version of Aliens.
And I heard that he wasn't really happy with it too. He wanted to go even further, and I think they kind of like restricted him, right?
Yeah, there's a whole opening sequence that's different, and you can see it on the special edition.
I think Joss Whedon
where
wrote
they have
number 3.
where they use storyboards to kind of tell it. And it is a better version of the movie. And I think if Fincher, that was his first feature film,
Resurrection,
and I think if he had the Hollywood, like the power he has now that he wields now, he would have been able to make his own version. And it would have been nice. It would be cool if he can go back and do that too.
Man, other than the mech suit though, I think my favorite sequence in Aliens. Well, Bill Paxton's great in it too, man.
Yeah,
I forgot about
one
that.
of his most memorable lines. Yeah,
is that Game Over, man?
Game over.
Game over, man.
It's game over.
You have the Marines. No, I was going to say my favorite sequence though, other than the mech suit, is that whole thing in the water when like the little girl's in the water and then that like pincer, like a scorpion, comes out of the water. Yeah. Oh man, it's so
with
good.
The sparks and everything.
Such great practical effects. That's why
I'm
not really a big fan of Prometheus and the new ones, and just these old ones are just like you can't beat them. So,
and I will say another great thing about the Aliens trilogy in itself is a lot of great strong female characters.
Yeah, I mean Ripley's is one of the most
and Ridley Scott is known for that. I feel like a lot of his movies have a lot of strong
Thelma and Louise,
and G.I. Jane is another one.
I was just talking to our boy Brandon Cox a little bit on Twitter.
Yeah,
someone mentioned that Ridley Scott said it might not be out of the question to have Ridley appear in another Alien movie coming up. Did I say Ridley? Sorry, Ripley.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh, maybe she'll be CGI to keep her young. And I'm like, oh, come on, man. She deserves better than that. I mean, that character is so, like in popular culture is a badass, and then you're just going to ruin it by like making her CGI. Great pick, man.
Yeah.
That was on my
Thanks.
list for sure. All these were on my list, honestly. Well, I'm gonna let you go, Cameron, for the next Cameron one too, just to keep it honest here, keep it 100. I'm actually gonna list 2 movies. They're old. I'm gonna. This is tough. Okay, I'm gonna.
How many more movies do you have?
I have 2 more
to talk about. Okay,
2
you
more.
have 2 more.
Yeah.
And I have. Yeah.
I have 2 more.
Okay.
One of
I
them.
have 2 more as well. Okay.
Okay, one of them. I think I'm going to take out of contention, and I'm going to say why. I don't want people getting up our ass about it. And
Doing an honorable mention.
Okay.
I don't know.
It is a very, very strong honorable mention. I am going to put it into the mix, but I don't want us to discuss it too much.
Okay.
Featuring probably the most famous score, one of the most famous scores of all time by Ennio Morricone. It's the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly by Sergio Leone. The reason I want to put this in the mix because
isn't it part of the trilogy? I mean, isn't it?
It
part
is.
Of the Fistful of
It's the
Dollars
3rd film.
Yeah.
So technically, I think it is a sequel.
A few dollars more.
Some people, from Criterion and their offices are going to call up and they're going to say, "Excuse me, it's technically a prequel because Angel Eyes, played by Clint Eastwood, receives his iconic poncho at the end of the film, so it's technically a prequel." Right. I kind of disagree with that. Whatever, if it is a prequel, sure, but it was the 3rd film released, and it is the biggest film out of all 3. I personally like Fistful of Dollars, maybe the best, because it is based off of Yojimbo, but just wanted to include this one because it is, sort of iconically
Such
known.
a great scene, showdown at the end too.
Yeah, great showdown at the end. I mean, changed the Western genre forever. But here's my next official submission. A little bit older, kind of. I think it might surprise you.
Okay.
Okay. Actually, I don't think this is going to be on your list.
This is where you pick Angels in the Outfield again.
Angels in the Outfield 2. Was there a sequel to
Air
that
Bud.
film? Air Bud. This film is from 1964. It also stars Sean Connery, Goldfinger,
Oh,
James Bond.
I didn't think of the Bond films,
And
because I'm not really a huge Bond fan. But
well, yeah, and I didn't think of this either. But
a lot of people consider this one of the best ones. So.
Well, right. Throughout my travels, many people would consider if you're going to watch one James Bond film that sort of encapsulates what James Bond is about, this might be the one with Sean Connery. So it's Goldfinger. He's fighting a character named Auric Goldfinger, who's the title character. The Bond girl is very famously Shirley Eaton, who plays Jill Masterson. She gets covered in gold, and it basically suffocates her, and she dies. I mean, it's pretty brutal. But a lot of the elements that were introduced in this film appeared in other James Bond films, such as like gadgets that he used, a long pre-credit sequence that wasn't part of the storyline, a lot of different locales that they jumped to, and then most notably sort of their tongue-in-cheek humor. So just wanted to mention this one. I want to put it in the mix. James Bond wasn't really one that I was going to discuss, but it is, one of the longest-running franchises of all time, and technically is a sequel to Dr. No, if you will, the first James Bond film with Sean Connery. We're not counting the Casino Royale satirical version with Woody Allen and David Niven, but this is the Barbara Broccoli and
Is
Albert
this
Broccoli
Connery's
film.
first one?
No, his first one's Dr. No.
Okay.
How
many did he do?
Let's see here. I should know this for trivia reasons, but let's see. He did 1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
8.
6, and I believe Never Say Never Again was not technically canon as James Bond. It was not considered that. 7, I guess, for him. Dr. No was first, then From Russia to Love. Goldfinger was the third one, and then Thunderball. Those 4 right there are great. Actually, You Only Live Twice is very, very good too. That's where he goes to Japan. So, yeah. So Dr. No was 62, From Russia to Love 63, Goldfinger 64, Thunderball 65. Think of that span right there. I mean, talking about franchises like Marvel and stuff. That's one movie after with the same lead character, 4 years in a row. That's pretty cool. So yeah, Goldfinger.
Yeah, it's 1 year after another. That's crazy.
Just wanted to submit that
I
one.
didn't think about those. That's a good consideration, I think.
Yeah, it's just one. I don't know if people are going to consider that on their sequel list, like a James Bond film, but yeah, I thought
All
it'd be good. Let's throw in the big dog.
Let's throw in the big dog.
Or one of them.
Do you know what the... Okay. There's a couple that I wanted to put in the mix, but I'm just going to honorable mention them. One of them is Dawn of the Dead, the 78 one by George Romero. A almost 10 years after the first one came out, Night of the Living Dead, which I think most people consider the first zombie almost anything.
Right.
But definitely first zombie film. I think it's worth a watch. I love that the main characters are basically trapped in a mall trying to survive the zombie outbreak, and all of the sort of the consumerism themes that are sort of rampant in that movie are pretty interesting. I think George Romero is great at that. Obviously the zombie genre, but great at like the zombies really are just a reflection of society and sort of mania, and I think it's worth a watch. And also, we talked about this in the time travel movies, but Back to the Future 2, just 2 by itself, I'm considering. I'm just listing here.
Yeah,
I think is a really good. Probably, I love the first one, but the second one is so exciting and fun because of the future stuff, and it's kind of silly now because we're like past that year, and a lot of those things didn't come to fruition. But
I wish those Pizza Hut things existed. Where like you put the little thing in there and it comes out.
Jacket drying. Your jacket is now dry. Anyway, I think it's a fun continuation of the film, and obviously part 3 they go in the Old West, but I think part 2 when I was a kid was like my favorite just because of the hoverboard and stuff. And
yeah.
But yeah, I'm just gonna throw that out there real quick, and then I got 2 more. I'm gonna go with to consider for the mix. Ghostbusters 2, 1989, directed by Ivan Reitman. I love the Ghostbusters, the first one. Again, this is not like, I don't know if Ghostbusters 2 is better than the first one, but I think this is a really good continuation of the movie, of that world, and to the point where I wish they would have made a third one, given the same, the same director, same characters, I think it's interesting. The second one actually starts where the Ghostbusters are kind of out of work because they've kind of solved the ghost problem, seemingly, and they're being sued by, they're basically, they're kind of bankrupt because the city is like kind of turned on them in terms of like kind of the damage they've done and a couple of them like do like dress up in the costumes and do birthday parties, and the first one was actually supposed to start like that. It was supposed to start as like they were already established, and
that's interesting.
And they decided that was too much, that they needed to actually like make more of an origin. So they added that in the second, which I think is a funny part. And he's like, "Who are you gonna call?" And kids go, "He-Man." And they're like, "All right." But I love like the whole ooze thing. I love the Vigo.
That's cool.
The Carpathian painting. That guy's really creepy, especially at the end when they kind of make him demonic.
The Statue of Liberty.
And Statue of Liberty scene is probably my favorite.
I love that. What's the song? You give your love, taking me higher. Yeah.
Then I ever. Anyway, yeah, that's a great sequence. That's actually my favorite. It's so cool how like they make that thing move and like make its way to Manhattan. But I just think it's a great continuation of that movie. Like I said, I wish there was a trilogy. I wish they would have rounded it out with a third one. Is
this a strong honorable mention or
no? This is in the mix for sure because I as a kid I actually liked this more than the first one. But I think that's because I was a little older at that point. I was like 8 years old, and it was right in my wheelhouse of like being amazed by movies. And I think that's why. But I still like the first one. I think slightly more. Yeah.
Well, then I'm going to submit. Do you have any more honorable mentions? Because I'm probably going to submit the last in the mix.
No, I have one more to mention, but that's it.
All right, so we're going to save one of the best for last. We're not going to go too far into it because we just talked about it our last 2 episodes ago.
Yeah, you're talking about the one that I was going to talk about.
So we'll just kind of double team this one just because it is pretty epic. I think if you're going to have a conversation, now this isn't how we're judging this episode, but if you're going to have a conversation about what movie sequel is better than the original, bigger, better, faster, stronger, I think you're going to go Terminator 2 Judgment Day from 1991, James Cameron.
For sure.
He took the Terminator character. Better than the first one. He made it bigger. He made the Terminator a good guy, a reprogrammed good guy. Linda Hamilton goes from ingenue what's the word I'm looking for?
She goes from like
in distress.
Yeah.
I can't. Damsel in distress to badass.
Yeah.
You have Dyson, which we talked about. The Dyson. The end of the world sequence. Robert Patrick is awesome as the villain. Is the T-1000.
Great cameo on Wayne's World 2 as well.
Oh yeah, that's true. Oh, that's true, man. I love when movies did that when they like referenced other movies. This movie is just there's not much to say about it. We had it in our best time travel movies episode, rightfully so there, but even more so, more importantly, one of the best sequels of all time. I mean, James
can't leave it out. Yeah,
can't leave it out. Influential as far as technology is concerned, with the special effects, the action set pieces in this are insane. The practical effects are insane. Arnold Schwarzenegger really became even more larger than life. If you come with me if you want to live. This movie is just epic on so many scales. Like, I don't really know what else to say about it.
Yeah, I think my favorite parts of this movie, I think we mentioned in Time Travels, was the fact that they made the T-800, the Arnold robot, a good guy in this one, the Protector. And I think that's so interesting because when he comes back to protect John Connor, his mom is super skeptical and everyone thinks he's crazy. But, in that time, like you said, she becomes a war machine, basically. She becomes, like, great with a gun, physically, much more, like, less... like can stand up for herself, and I think she's skeptical of the Terminator, but then ends up trusting him, and this is really great on all levels. And as far as sequels go, it is better than the first one. And I was thinking about this in parameters that I think what this movie does, and I think what a lot of these great sequels do, is it can stand on its own. Like, if you watch this movie and only this movie, you can enjoy it. You understand it. You don't need to know. You don't need to see the first one.
Right.
But it fits so well in the continuation too. You know what I mean? Like, it's like if you watch the first one and you see this one, there's such a great. You get that arc. You get, like, Linda Hamilton's transition from a damsel to being a badass, and also the Terminator from being a bad guy to a good guy. And
yeah,
that's a hard thing to do in other movies when people are played by flesh and blood people and not robots. And I think that's such a
Yeah, and talk about a perfect role for Arnold, for anyone who knocks his acting abilities, which I don't think are that
I mean,
bad.
It's probably his best movie, right?
Yeah, it probably is.
I mean, he's got a lot of great ones. I don't want to, like...
No, and this film is definitely, it's not only one of the best science fiction films, one of the best action films, but it's also one of the best time travel movies, but also one of the best sequels of all time. And last little mention to the dynamic duo of Dennis Muren and Stan Winston. So they both won Oscars for this as far as visual effects, and Stan Winston won it for makeup. I mean, the cybernetic, whatever you call them, the skeletal like Terminators are insane, and then all the makeup where his face is like melting off.
Where they crush the skulls and then they...
And what a way to end this episode as far as submissions are, by having the thumb go through the lava. So, great movie. So you want to deliberate and see?
Yeah.
Just so for the audience, just while you're driving or taking a bath or doing whatever, if you're naked, the final submissions into the mix are Empire Strikes Back, Fast 5, Die Hard with a Vengeance, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, The Dark Knight, The Godfather Part 2, Aliens, Goldfinger, T2 Judgment Day, and Ghostbusters 2.
Right.
So we're going to go deliberate, and we'll be back.
And now it's time to announce the best of the best.
All right, so we're back.
Yeah.
We're back from the future, and we have basically...
Sweaty again.
This was a really hard one. I mean, those are some great movies.
This time Neil laid out a full karate mat and put on a gi, and then I had to fight him for the last two spots. So,
this was
resin on our hands.
This was a hard one. Some people might disagree. It could be a little bit controversial. We're excited to hear your opinions, but we talked about it, and it kind of went a couple different ways. I mean, it's going to be an interesting list.
It's a toss-up for some of these, I think.
Yeah, I mean, these are all great movies. They're all great sequels, and it was hard to pick, a top 7. But
we listed a lot on this too, so hopefully there's some, some ones you guys maybe. Well, I'm sure we missed a bunch.
Yeah, we missed the Three Colors trilogy,
right?
Again, but honorable mention.
But so. At number 7 and 6, these are always there's our Tony Kukoc, Steve Kerr, our bench players that didn't make it in the top 5, but should be mentioned nonetheless. Is at number 7, Die Hard 3, or Die Hard with a Vengeance, as it's properly titled. Nothing more we can really say about this. John McTiernan's back with this one, and the last good Die Hard, in my opinion, and great film, great pairing with Samuel and John McClane.
And this next one just barely was left out of the top 5.
Exactly. Number 6, Dark Knight, the second in Chris Nolan's Batman trilogy. This was hard. I love Dark Knight. It just didn't beat out any of the top 5 films that you'll hear next. So,
all right, let's kick it to our movie trailer guy and find out who are the best of the best.
Number 5.
Aliens. At number 5, we picked Aliens, directed by James Cameron. I love the Aliens. I'm going to call it the trilogy. I know there's more than that, but I love this series of films just because of the different filmmakers involved and how they brought their own ideas and tone to it. And the second one in particular really elevates the whole story with Ripley. And I think this one is more action packed than the first one, which is great. I think like the first one's more suspenseful and horror, and this one really ups the action. And I think it puts James Cameron on the map and really cements Aliens as a tour de force in terms of franchises. So
Number 4.
The Godfather Part 2. We some people might be surprised that this is a little higher on the list, not as low as some people think it. I guess lower on the list, not as high as it should be. We know it's a Best Picture winner. We know a lot of people consider this to be one of the best sequels of all time, maybe one of the best movies of all time. But Mark and I just discussed it even more during the break that we prefer the Godfather more than The Godfather Part 2, and we didn't want to diminish its importance in cinema history as a sequel. And it is a great movie. It does go back in time and show you the rise of Vito Corleone with Robert De Niro's great performance, Oscar-winning performance. But we decided to put this at number 4, but still think it is a strong film that is on this list. We just didn't have it as high as some people may have thought. So Godfather Part 2.
Number 3.
Empire Strikes Back, directed by Irvin Kershner, the second in the original trilogy, number 5 in the Star Wars in the episodes. Yes, like we talked about before, this has the great turn where we see how everyone is related, literally, like Darth Vader revealing that he's Luke's father and Leia's father, for that matter, and that there are twins. And I think it just ups the ante. It just makes everything more. Like the first one's definitely like more of a swashbuckling adventure, and this one really brings in the drama. And I think, those connections, everyone being sort of familiar, family connected, really sets this franchise. Again, I think this is what cements Star Wars as a lasting force in cinema. So,
Number 2.
T2 Judgment Day. So we had a very long discussion about the 1 and 2 spot, and Terminator 2 ultimately will stay in the number 2 spot from our time travel films. And we just love this movie. It's bigger and better than the first one. It could possibly be, one of the best sequels of all time. It is ultimately one of the films that is better than the original. We put this one here. Another strong female character along with Ripley, Linda Hamilton. I always forget her character's name in these films.
Sarah Connor.
Sarah Connor, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sarah Connor. So
right.
Arnold Schwarzenegger, maybe one of his best performances. Stan Winston, Dennis Muren winning Oscars for the visual effects. James Cameron, just firing on all cylinders. And couldn't do this list without T2. So that is our number T2. Ironically, I guess in the 2 spot.
At number 1, the best of the best is
Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. This was a hard one for Neil and I. We were debating whether Terminator 2... It was basically between Terminator 2 and Indiana Jones for the 2 and 1 spot. We did the time travel movie where Terminator 2 was in the number 2 spot again. And so we, for that reason, we were like, well, maybe it should be number 1. But honestly, I think Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade is such a great sequel. I think it stands alone. I think it stands alone too. I think you could watch it without having seen Raiders or Temple or Crystal Skull, and
that's true,
and still enjoy this movie. It's got a great, somewhat origin story at the beginning, played by the great and long past River Phoenix, and the dichotomy between Indiana Jones and his father Henry is great. It's one of the best duos in a movie. I just think well casted. It's funny. It's action packed. They fight Nazis. They cover a lot, and I think just the relationship, how they grow.
And I didn't even
as father and son.
I didn't even push you into this.
No. Neil's a huge Spielberg fan. I like Spielberg a lot too, but this one I feel like Neil and I are most excited about this film in terms of this list. And so, Indiana Jones, Last Crusade, number 1.
And, for anyone, who thinks that Empire Strikes Back should have been number one, we understand it. We see it. We see your point. If anyone thinks that Godfather Part 2 should be number one, we understand it, or T2. But all Mark and I have to say to close out this episode, before we tell you what we're going to say, make sure to check us out on social media. Tell us your opinions. Tell people about this podcast, please, and help us out. But on a closing note, Mark, this is sort of our official statement. If you don't think that Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade belongs at number one, you lost today, kid, but it doesn't mean you have to like it.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
What is happening to me?
You chose one.
Thanks for listening. If you think we've missed any of your favorites, message us on Twitter and Instagram using the handle @BestOfBestPod and include your own top 5 by using the hashtag BOTB. We ask that you rate, review, and subscribe to Best of the Best on iTunes or your preferred podcast app. Have ideas for show topics, opinions, or just want to say hello? Send us an email to bestofthebestpod@gmail.com. Till next time, special thanks to Radar Studios and long live Don Hogue.